You know, when you hear Ellis Island, you probably get this image in your head. A huge, crowded hall full of people with hopeful faces taking their first step toward becoming an American. And look, you're not wrong, but that's really only one part of the story. So, let's get into it. This island's incredible, and honestly, kind of surprising history, from a place where they used to hang pirates to the Golden Door for millions.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what happened here, we're not going to ease into it. We're jumping right into the deep end. We're starting at the absolute peak, the single busiest, most intense year in the island's entire history. This is the year the legend of Ellis Island was truly forged.
Just try to picture that for a second. 1.2 million people in 1 year. That is thousands and thousands of people every single day. It was like a constant river of humanity flowing through this one little island, and every single person was carrying their own story, their own hopes, and their own dream of starting a new life.
And you have to remember the context here. After weeks stuck on a crowded ship, probably in steerage, the very first thing these people saw wasn't Ellis Island itself, it was the Statue of Liberty. This quote just nails it. Liberty was the mother of exiles. It was that first breathtaking visual promise of America. Ellis Island, well, that was the test to see if they could actually get in.
Okay, so from that one insane year, let's zoom out. Over its entire 62 years of operation, more than 12 million people were processed right here. I mean, that's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to really grasp. It represents countless families and futures that would literally go on to shape the fabric of the United States.
But here's the thing. This iconic gateway didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Long before it was the Island of Hope, this small patch of land had a long, pretty wild history, and it served some very, very different and sometimes much darker purposes.
I mean, talk about a transformation. This timeline is just wild. The island starts out with the humble name Little Oyster Island. Then it takes a really grim turn and becomes Gibbet Island. Yep, a place for publicly hanging pirates as a warning to other ships. From there, it becomes a strategic military fort, before finally, in 1892, it begins its most famous chapter. What a journey, right? From a place of death to a place of brand new beginnings?
So, why the big change in 1892? Well, to put it simply, the old system was totally broken. Individual states were trying to handle immigration on their own, and they just couldn't keep up. They were completely overwhelmed. The sheer number of people arriving meant they needed a bigger, more organized, federally run solution. And Ellis Island was going to be that solution.
All right, so now let's get to the real heart of the experience. What was it actually like for an immigrant who just landed at Ellis Island? It was a very structured and, let's be honest, often terrifying process that was designed to be as brutally efficient as possible.
Okay, put yourself in their shoes. You've just spent weeks on a boat. Now, if you were in first or second class, you were usually processed right on the ship. But if you were in steerage, you got packed onto a ferry and brought here. You'd walk into this massive building and immediately face a medical line for a quick check. And then, the final, crucial step, the legal inspection in that vast, intimidating registry room. And this was it. This was the moment it all came down to. An inspector, with the ship's manifest in hand, would basically fire off 29 questions. They were making sure you were who you said you were, checking if you had any money, at least enough to get started, and making sure you weren't likely to become a burden on the state. For most people, this was over in just a few hours, but can you imagine the anxiety of that final interview? It held the key to your entire future.
So for decades, Ellis Island was this incredible buzzing machine. But then, American policy started to change, and the role of this island changed dramatically right along with it. The big turning point was in 1924 with something called the National Origins Act. This law completely flipped the script. See, before, you showed up at Ellis Island and got inspected. After 1924, the whole process moved to U.S. consulates overseas. You had to get a visa before you even got on the boat. On top of that, strict national quotas were introduced, and the flow of immigration slowed to a trickle. All of a sudden, the massive machine of Ellis Island just wasn't needed anymore.
With that golden door effectively closing, the island's purpose took a really sad, dark turn. The Island of Hope became a place of detention and deportation. During World War II, it was even used to hold enemy aliens. It was just a tragic final chapter for what was once the busiest port of entry in the world.
So after the very last detainee left in 1954, the story really could have ended right there. The island could have just been left to crumble into the harbor. But thankfully, it didn't. Ellis Island was about to begin its next, and maybe its most important chapter yet. It's actually kind of hard to believe, but for years, this place of such incredible historical importance was just abandoned. The Great Halls fell silent. The buildings started to rot and decay. It was officially declared surplus property, which is just a bureaucratic way of saying it had been forgotten.
But its story wasn't over. A decade after being abandoned in 1965, it was finally declared a national monument. That was the first step. The real magic happened after a huge restoration effort, which all led to 1990, when these halls, once filled with anxious, hopeful immigrants, reopened as the museum we know today, a place dedicated to preserving all of their stories.
So why does this little island story still matter so much to us today? Well, it all comes down to this number. An estimated 40%, that's nearly half, of all Americans can trace at least one ancestor back through these very halls. This isn't some distant, dusty history. For millions and millions of us, this is family history.
And really, that's what it all comes back to. The legacy of Ellis Island isn't just trapped in a museum, it's alive. It lives on in the stories of families all across this country. It's just a powerful reminder of all the journeys, the big ones and the small ones, that have shaped who we